All right, Rick. Thanks for joining us. First question for you is: it used to be in the world of TV that things were simpler, right? It was like things went on linear TV and maybe cable, and that's how TV networks were judged. Today, obviously, with streaming, there's a whole new component of that where you're judged on how many subscribers you had or the engagement. And so my question for you is, at the end of the year, when you have your end of year review, whether that's with Matt Strauss or Mark Kavanaugh or whatever, how are you judged? What are the metrics that they're looking at to figure out if you did a good job or not?
Look, I think you're right. It's more complicated than it used to be. I mean, I remember deals when I first came to NBC Sports in 2006. They'd be done on the back of a napkin at a bar, how much you're paying and what content you're getting. A lot of the packages you buy were what was put on in broadcast before. Now it's much more complicated than that. What are the highlight rights that you have within a package? What are the live rights, full replay rights? Where does the content live after it appears on your networks? And so when you look at the sports overall, like, how are we doing? Certainly ratings still matter, and you see us put out press releases every weekend of how well we did on certain properties. The advertisers and their interest in live has only increased over time. So what are the CPMs we can get in the marketplace, which ultimately drives advertising revenue? What are distributors saying, both paid TV as well as, and this is a sort of a new sort of way we look at things too. Peacock needs to be distributed through, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and the terms we strike with those agreements are oftentimes based upon how good your sports portfolio is. So it's sort of all into a blend, and I'd say kind of all the above is how we get judged on it.
Are there particular earmarks for, okay, is there a way of figuring out the sports component to how many subscribers Peacock added or hours watched on Peacock?
Yeah, for sure. So when we look at a property, we'll say, okay, what is the direct advertising value of that? That's both on linear as well as Peacock. There is what are the subs that will be driven directly by this property? And that you can translate into, okay, how many subs will come in the door? And I think we had talked about the wild card game, right, and saying, hey, people came in for the first month and there was a certain length of their tenure that you could apply the economics to. So we'll do that from the Peacock side. And then we'll look at the indirect economics, like how many other hours do they watch outside of sports? So we know, someone comes in for a particular property, they then watch, and again, the wild card example, to keep pulling on that thread, they watch TED and they watch Traders and they watch other shows. Those economics are attributed back to having sports in the property. So sports acts as a catalyst to bring them in. You boil that all in, and that's the value of that sports property.
You guys bid $2.45 billion per year on the NBA. Outsiders that I spoke to at the time said that was an overbid, but no one ever really gave me the math behind why they said that. So I'm curious to hear from you, like, what was the math you used to figure out you were comfortable with that number?
Yeah, I mean, just what I said. You add up all those various components, but when a property like the NBA, which is tier one, right? Tier one, NFL, Olympics, NBA, right there. But you look at the NBA, advertisers, spend money against it, considerable money. It's definitely an advertiser's dream. Culturally, punches its weight. Demographics are younger. For us, it starts in October and quite frankly goes through the entire year when you count the WNBA. So in terms of a Peacock perspective, the audience won't churn like they would for a singular event. You also look at when it peaks, it's Q2, and we don't have much sports content around, so that also helps us out. So when you factor all that in and then go back to those relationships with distributors, both digital distributors as well as paid TV distributors, the NBA matters. So you factor all that in, that's how we justify the investment.
Yeah, just to harp on that Q2 point, that I think is a good example of how the TV world has changed, right? Because in the old cable world, the churn was negligible.
Yep.
You didn't really have to care about that. Now in this new world, you have to care about when certain sports are airing so that people don't cancel their service.
And when you think about the NBA, it's really two deals in one. We have a considerable amount of content, right? 100 plus regular season games. About half of that's going to be on Peacock. The other half is going to be on linear. And we're taking up a night of prime time on Tuesday nights. And then Sunday night basketball will happen after that. But every Monday night, there'll be a doubleheader on Peacock. As you head to the playoffs, half the playoff games for the NBA are going to be on Peacock. The other half will be on big NBC. And so we're able to drive both parts of our ecosystem, which, is sort of the aim of the business.
The Kentucky Derby is this coming weekend. I have to admit, it caught me off guard last year when I saw how huge that ratings number was. It was the biggest Kentucky Derby since 1989, I
Correct.
think.
Yep.
It was the 150th running, but I'm curious to hear from you, what do you think drove that number, and then do you expect a similar number for this year?
So there is, and people will caveat, there is a methodology change that includes out-of-home viewership, which is about 5%. It's going to increase another 2% this year as all markets are included. But the numbers we're seeing, not just in the Kentucky Derby, which you said 1989 was the high, Sunday Night Football was the highest since 2015, right? And not just NBC, by the way. You look at the Super Bowl, the highest of all time on Fox, the Masters and March Madness on CBS, the first round of the NBA playoffs, the highest in 25 years on Turner and ESPN. It's happening across the board. The Paris Olympics for us, beyond our wildest expectations with how that delivered.
Right, so what's going on here?
I think that there's asynchronous viewing is being shifted off. And I think we even dealt with this more recently a few years ago where like Yellowstone was on Paramount on Sunday nights or Game of Thrones was on Sunday nights. And you had to choose, do I watch Sunday Night Football or do I watch Game of Thrones, because there's a social conversation that's happening. It feels like, hey, that show, while I love it, I can watch it later. I can watch it tomorrow, the next day. There isn't like, if I don't show up to work on Monday morning at the water cooler, I'll feel like I'm not up to speed, because people are watching shows at different paces. And it allows you the urgency of live to kind of shine through. So it's not just sports, by the way. The Thanksgiving Day Parade had its highest rating of all time too. And so I think there's a little bit of this renaissance in broadcast TV, that live matters to broadcast TV. You tune it on to see what's happening in the moment, whether it be news or sports, and you're having a greater congregation of viewership around that across the board.
This is particularly relevant to the Derby, but how much is sports betting playing into this?
It helps. There's no question about it. To get casual audiences more engaged into caring about the outcomes of games and races and other such things, it absolutely helps.
What is the NBC sports betting strategy?
I think we first looked at it before. We're all like, can we get into it? Do we want to be an owner in this space? And that proved to be fairly difficult. Where we are today, and we're partnered with different sports books here and there. We're an advertiser. It's like, the auto industry doesn't make sense for us to own an auto company because they advertise a lot around sports. Same thing about sports gambling.
Would you consider what ESPN has done, where you're licensing the name for revenue?
Every deal is unique and different. You'd have to consider it if it came to us. Right now, we love partnering with who we partner with.
I talked briefly about the NBA deal in terms of the size of it. That's a big programming challenge for you guys. It's an interesting one, I think, because there's so much nostalgia built into the NBA on NBC, and yet the name of the game is you also have to appeal toward younger viewers. Right. So how are you planning on striking that balance?
So I don't think they're mutually exclusive at all. And I know you're you're on the Round Ball Rock beat.
Yeah, where are we with that too? That deal.
We're making progress. We
Okay.
hope to have some news soon. We'll see.
Okay, good.
But I know you're across that. And but it's funny when I listened to John Tesh on your CNBC program last fall. I think Becky Quick made the comment like it sounds old, right?
Right.
My point is, I don't know if that matters. Like, I think that there's a certain amount of people that understand it will have a Pavlovian response to it when they hear it, and it brings back the 90s. It brings back Michael Jordan winning NBA titles. It brings back a different time in their lives, and that's a positive impact. For those that are not familiar with it, that are younger, I don't know if it turns them off. So I think it's a blend of that nostalgia that will bring back in. And by the way, it's not just nostalgia. Like, I think NBC did the NBA a bit differently. I'm not talking negatively about ESPN or Turner and how they do their coverage of the NBA, but I've gotten caught in these rabbit holes on YouTube, looking at a Bob Costas narration leading into the Eastern Conference Game 7. Sure. Patrick Ewing, Reggie Miller, one man left standing, and you feel like it's a heavyweight fight, and you're on the edge of your seat, and the lasered NBC Sports logo goes on, and John Tesh's Round Ball Rock plays through, and the NBA on NBC with Jim Fagan. All that is part of like what sort of made that event feel big. And so our goal at NBC Sports is to make big events feel big and be big. And so we're going to bring a lot of that back, show the atmosphere of the arena. Like, here's another example, Michael Jordan's player introductions. Very, very small amount of people were actually in Chicago Stadium, hearing Sirius by the Alan Parsons Project and 6'6" from North Carolina, etc. The reason why people don't know it so well is because NBC showed it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of it too. Like, let's get in and show the atmosphere, make this seem like a big game. And so you'll see that. And we'll have our talent on site at the arenas on Sunday nights when we have Sunday night basketball. to just, again, make it feel like this is a big thing. And similar to Sunday football, it's the game of the week.
I mean, I'm curious how important it is to entice the younger viewer to watch the game, because there is an argument they're not interested in watching the full game. So maybe it shouldn't be the number one priority for you guys.
Hard to argue in that when you see record ratings, right? When you look through and look at Sunday football,
even in the demo level, it's record ratings for 20.
I don't have that exact record there, but I'm sure it maybe not for the NBA, but the NFL. We thought, again, the Super Bowl is the highest of all time. It's hard to set Super Bowl records without having your demographic being engaged in it. And this is kitchen science. I have an 8-year-old son who does watch the Celtics games with me. And when the games are on, he's sitting next to me watching the games. I know that's dangerous. Here's the thing: you can't take away the highlights, right? The social media and what's happening there is going to happen anyway. And growing up, there was an unmet demand around that. Like, I remember growing up in Boston, and WHDH would play the sports highlights from 6:15 to 6:17. WBZ would play it from 6:17 to 6:20, and WCVB Channel 5 would play it after that. And I watched all three. Even though the same highlights, I wanted to watch it. It didn't make me any less of a fan to go watch Larry Bird play later on that night. So I think the same thing's happening. Like, we're seeing this incredible increase of consumption of NBA or NFL content on social media platforms. I don't think it necessarily takes away from what the long game is. And look, we're going to invest. We have to make sure that game is interesting, that our production is top notch to make you want to tune in and tell the stories of the players, to understand the storylines so people tune in. But I don't think necessarily it's one or the other.
I want to go sport by sport here quickly. Let's start with Major League Baseball.
Yep.
NBC has been public about its interest in the new Sunday package that is now available, that ESPN has opted out of starting next season. Where are you guys in that negotiation with the league?
I think with any league that brings their product to market, we have a deck on it. We do analysis on it. We look at through those, various things I mentioned at the very top about how much value we can drive off Peacock, off linear, off distribution, off advertising. And does that economic reality make sense with what another league is asking for in return versus our peer set? And sometimes there's a match, sometimes there's not. With baseball or any other sport that's out there, like, we'll see. I don't have any news on it.
Do you feel like there has been progression in the talks?
I think we talked to everyone. There's a few different deals that are up at this time, including MLB, and we look at all of them and we'll make an assessment.
That one, I will say, makes a bit of more logical sense for NBC in a certain way than it does for any other company, in that you now have Sunday night basketball and Sunday night football.
Right.
So there is an argument, correct me if I'm wrong, that adding Sunday night baseball might make some sense.
There would be some symmetry to that for sure.
Yeah. UFC also up now. Is that of interest to you guys?
We look at it. We talk to the TKO guys. Probably not a sort of top priority for us, but it's something, again, we'll look at.
Is that the same story for F1?
Similar, sure.
Football, you guys already have Sunday Night Football. That's locked up. What are you hoping from the NFL schedule makers this year that would make you particularly happy?
I mean, I feel like what I wish for is the same thing that Fox or ESPN or CBS or Amazon's going to wish for, which is Dallas Cowboy games, Kansas City Chief games, top teams playing, on our channels and on our networks week in and week out. But no, we work really well with the NFL, like Mike North and Hans Schroeder and that Ani Bose, the entire team over there. We give them what we think is right. We kind of list our top games, and they try and do the best job they can to spread the wealth across all the various partners.
The Masters you mentioned, huge ratings. Again, Rory McIlroy obviously winning that. I'm curious if, in your mind, because golf airs on both NBC and Golf Channel, which is still, at least for the time being, and as part of the NBC Universal world, that will be spun out. I'll get to that one in a second. But have we finally entered a post-Tiger Woods phase for golf in terms of viewership, where viewers are now tuning into golf not for Tiger Woods?
I think that was the case. I mean, we had, the U.S. Open last year. Bryson and Rory, not in the same group, but came down the stretch. I think we peaked at 12 million viewers for that final hour. So, look, the Masters is the Masters. We understand that has all the tradition, and that is, the first major of the year, and it'll have a certain attendance and viewership of it. But, when you have the best golfers playing against each other with stakes high, that is compelling TV. And obviously the Sunday at the Masters was incredible, compelling TV.
There is some emphasis, though, you see it with TGL, on trying to build out the personalities of these golfers a little bit more.
Yeah.
And in my mind, that does have to do with a post-Tiger world, right? Like, how do we build characters? It's sort of the Netflix strategy, too, with making documentaries around these players so that, you know.
Yeah, look, Bryson on YouTube. I mean, what he's done there, hitting balls over his house. I mean,
totally.
I mean, he's done an amazing job of building up his persona, and he's probably one of the most interesting guys in golf. Like, you want to see what's he going to do next. You know, what kind of long drive he's going to hit, what kind of, you know, just his emotions. I mean, he hits these, you know, shots and he high fives the fans. We had him at the U.S. Open last year in Pinehurst, and we had asked him to be on Smiley Kaufman's happy hour, which he kind of is a little set from the actual course. And he agreed to do it. Didn't realize that it was like at 5 o'clock during the actual happy hour and not at 11 or 12 whenever he finished. He came back out in the 90-degree heat, sat with us, and had 1,000 fans asking for it. He was fantastic. And so I think that needs to be more in golf, that the golfers have to be engaged with the fans and show their personalities for sure. And TGL is an avenue for that. That's fantastic.
So your strategy has always involved this slew of cable networks. There are certain sports that air on USA, and you've got Golf Channel.
Yeah.
Even CNBC airs certain sports during the Olympics and elsewhere.
The home of curling.
The home of curling, right. Rugby has aired on CNBC.
Yep.
Let alone the CNBC Sports TV show, which
will
continue. My question to you is, that relationship is going to come to an end, theoretically, at the end of the year.
Yep.
Walk me through how that works. Because the rights will continue on after the spin. So does the relationship also continue?
So we will fulfill every right and obligation we have in our contracts that exist. There'll be some certain properties. Take Premier League, for instance, will still live on USA. Will still live on NBC. Live on Premier League. Other rights like PGA Tour Golf will have NBC weekends. We'll work closely. I mean, sports is a relationship business. And I have no great relationship in sports and with Mark Lazarus and obviously all my teammates.
Who will be the CEO of the spin-out company.
Spin-out company, and Dave Patrica and Tom Knapp, who runs the Golf Channel. All these guys, we worked together for a decade or more. And so while we'll be at arm's length on January 1st, we'll still find ways to work together.
Will that make future distribution deals more of a challenge for you without having the cable portfolio?
Look, I think what we have on the NBC side, having Sunday Night Football, the Olympics, and the NBA, I think we're pretty strong.
Is it possible that the spun-out company will eventually become a competitor to you for rights?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So you already expect that?
Oh, I expect. They're going to have a sports strategy that's independent of our, NBC sports strategy, and they're going to do what's right for their business. We'll do what's right for our business. At some point, that may cross over. We'll see. But yeah, I expect that they're going to, build up their sports business.
Everyone loves to talk about the theoretical competition that is coming, we all assume, to some degree here already, from the big tech guys, whether it's Netflix or YouTube or Apple.
Yep.
Amazon's a little further down the road. I would say they're already a real, true competitor on sports rights. Who do you see 5 years from now as the likely main competitors for the big rights?
You mentioned all the names there. They are bidding for rights now. Amazon has NBA and NFL. Apple has Major League Baseball. Netflix, got into the NFL game this past season. So they're there, and we expect them to be there as rights come to market. I think the advantage is, it sort of goes back to what I said before about live. We think that live's having a moment on broadcast TV. We think there's a 20 to 30% gap between what broadcast TV plus Peacock or plus streaming can deliver versus what a streamer only can deliver.
In terms of viewership or ratings.
Of reach.
Yeah.
And I think that's on the bigger events. I think when it becomes the more casual events where people bump into a show and end up watching it, or bump into a sport and end up watching it, that's going to be greater. And so if you go into the numbers, you can kind of see it within the co-view and everything else, but there's still a moat around, I think, the broadcast business.
Is that 20 to 30% versus a streamer on average? Because it strikes me like, well, Netflix has a lot more viewers on their streaming service than other streamers do.
For sure.
Like, they had a huge audience for the Paul Tyson fight. So does that delta still apply to them?
I don't know specifically on the Paul Tyson fight, but you look at the NFL games that Amazon or
But Netflix had great ratings on the NFL games.
They do, but if you look at what the co-view was last year, you have to dive into the numbers a bit to see the differences, but there is still a little bit of a difference. I think they would even admit that too.
do you have the existential fear that some other legacy media companies do that sit in similar positions to you, what I've talked to privately, that they're fighting for their lives so that they don't get phased out of the conversation again, maybe 5 years from now? But that, you look at their balance sheet and you look at yours, and it, like, the numbers don't math.
Look, I think that's a little bit hyperbolic to a degree. Look, 5 years down, do I expect to, NBC Sports to have a portfolio? Of course, we have deals, the Olympics through 2036, the NBA is through 2036, Ryder Cup's 2031. I mean, we have these long-term deals. We're in the sports business, no matter what the balance sheet of a tech company versus Comcast may have. And look, we're lucky to be owned by Comcast. Comcast is a big company, and it has the financial might to bid and invest in sports and content. So I feel pretty good with the hand that we have.
Is there any one of these competitors that you look at and you say, I think they're doing a particularly good job?
It's hard to comment on our competitors. Look, I think it's funny because we are competitors in the sense, and I say competitors, I mentioned it's Amazon, it's Netflix, as well as traditionals like ESPN, Fox, and CBS, and Turner. Like we all like each other. Like it's one of these things, like, outside of bidding for talent and for rights, and we're incredibly competitive there. Like we're on this March of Dimes board, for instance, and we all get along. We all trade war stories, and it's a good group of folks that run sports divisions across the country. So I don't think necessarily anyone's doing better or worse. We're all trying to figure it out.
Were you surprised with how much you guys ended up having to pay for the NBA?
I don't know if surprise is the right word. I mean, we got into the NBA because sports on Peacock was working for us, right? We have an incredible sports portfolio on Peacock. And I think when you sort of look at like what we have, because I think there's some people they like Premier League and they know we're known for Premier League, or they like WWE and they go to watch WrestleMania. But when you look across the board from WWE, Premier League, the PGA Tour, to NBA now, to Olympics, Sunday Night Football, Big Ten, both simulcast and exclusives. We'll have 200 plus collegiate games next year between the Big East and the Big Ten, plus women's. It's an incredible Supercross. I'm sure I'm missing some, my favorite children out there, but like we have an unbelievable portfolio, and relative to where everyone else is, it's maybe one of the best portfolios of streaming in sports.
You led right into my question, which is, you think about Netflix and you're like, okay, they're sort of the everything streaming service, or Max has HBO, which is prestige, and Disney has Disney Plus, which is family. Is Peacock now sports?
I wouldn't say that. I think Peacock is in tremendous value, which has a great sports portfolio, but great Universal Film. And Universal Film, they're the number one studio last year, I think, from a box office standpoint. We have their films, 60, 90, 120 after they're in the theaters. We have great originals. We're next day NBC. We have an incredible library, Office, Parks and Rec, 30 Rock, that kind of stuff. It's a great. Look, I know I'm biased. I'm working here, but it's a great deal at the end of the day for the amount of content you get across those various genres. Sports is a component of that.
But do you think some sort of consolidation or bundled with someone else, like a product that offers both Paramount and Peacock, whatever, does that make sense?
I think when you bundle products together for a discount, it minimizes churn. From a business standpoint, it absolutely makes sense. From a consumer standpoint, if you can get money off of the retail price because you're buying more than one, you're getting a volume discount, for sure.
Rick Cordella, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.